All right guys, this is BMX Basics with WASP Camera. My name is Morgan Long and you're watching RideBMX.com. So you got a flat, the first thing you're gonna need is a tool, whatever size you need to take your wheel off. Most commonly it's gonna be a 17 millimeter. You probably need an extension if you have pegs. If you're lucky like me and don't have pegs, no extension needed. You can use a crescent wrench, box wrench, whatever. Shit's easier when you don't have pegs. All right, so loosen your wheel. Push your wheel up so you can hopefully take your chain off. Most kids have it set up where their wheel's pulled back a little bit when it is tightened down, so just push it up. That gets your chain looser where you can get it off easily, and then pull your whole wheel out of the dropouts of the frame. From there, you want to make sure, even if you do have a flat, you want to make sure all the air that you can get out of the tube is out, just to make your life easier when you're trying to get the tube or the tire off the rim. All right, best way to get the tire off the rim is honestly just using your hands. With the right technique, you can usually get most tires off using no tools and just your hands. If you are new to this and haven't done it before, you might need to use a tire lever, which is the best option. Some people use a flathead screwdriver. Not recommended, just because it's pretty sharp and easy to pinch your tube while prying the tire on or off. But if you're very careful and you're in a pinch, you can use one for sure. So if you're using a tire lever, you basically just kind of pinch the tire together to where it creates a little space where you can push the tire lever in between the tire and the rim. It'll have like a little hooked lip on the tire lever that goes underneath the tire, and then just push that down. Usually a tire lever will have like a little spot on the tire lever where you can kind of actually, when it's pushed down, hook it into a spoke to where it kind of holds it in place for you, and then you can pull the rest of the tire off, usually by hand. Once you get the tire pried off the rim, you can do it either two ways, with just one side pulled away from the rim, where you can still be able to get a new tube in there and check the entire tire for whatever is sticking through that caused your flat. Find whatever it is that caused your flat and make sure you pull it out completely. Even if you find one thing, keep looking at the rest of the tire just to make sure you could have two things in there that caused the flat, or something else that's sticking in there that didn't cause a flat, but you don't want anything sticking in your tire that could eventually push through and cause another flat. Now that you've done the inspection, make sure everything's out of your tire and you're ready to put a new tube in. Put just enough air in the tube, in your new tube, to make the tube take shape. You want to have a little bit of air in the tube. It just makes it easier to install, and you're less likely to pinch the tube when you're putting it in. So the easiest way to do it is have the tire halfway off of the rim, so it's only loose on the one side. You have it inspected, made sure everything's out of your tire that caused your flat. Put your tube back inside of the tire with the one half off. Put your valve stem in first to kind of keep the tube in place and keep it from rotating, and then start working the tire back on. When you're starting to push the tire back on, definitely can always start it with your hands. I like to start at the valve stem, just because then you don't end up at the end of the process by the valve stem and your tire doesn't flex as much, which makes it a little bit harder to install. So basically, start it out by just pushing it on with your hand and get most of the tire back onto the rim with your hand. Hold it in place with one and just keep working it around. I like to use both thumbs and just kind of push it on and up and over. And once you get to a point where you can't push any more on with your hand, just use the tire lever. Yeah, so the whole using a lever or not using a lever thing is kind of all technique. Almost any tire and any rim combo out there, I've just changed so many flats, I can just do it with my hands and don't need a tire lever or screwdriver at all. I know that's not always the case, and especially if you're new to this, you're not going to be able to just whip it on and off with your hands and no tools. But if you're in a situation where you don't have a tire lever or something like that, and you really have to try to use only your hands, when you're trying to get the tire off, try to push the bead of the tire under the rim, pull it up. So you're basically working all the slack into the tire up where you're trying to pry it off. And then the same goes for when you're putting it on. So you'll basically, when you're putting it on, you want to work it on with your hand as far as you can. Most cases you can, if you know what you're doing, you can push it on all the way with only your hand. And the same as when you're taking it off, you just want to try to push all that slack into that one concentrated area so you have the most slack to work with to push it on. You got your tire all the way back on. you want to go ahead, you probably don't have brakes on your bike, so you might as well just go ahead and air it up off the bike. Go ahead and pump up the tire. This is very important when you're airing up a tire at any time. You don't want to just shove the nozzle on there and blow it up all the way in one go. So put like 10-20 pounds, just a little bit where it's semi-hard, spin the wheel all the way around and look by the rim and where the tire and the rim meets, and make sure that it's not bubbling off anywhere. So if the rim is bubbling, or if you notice the tire is bubbling off the rim anywhere, you're gonna need to let the air out and then kind of work that tire and push it down right there. What's happening is the tube is kind of underneath the tire and pushing it off the rim when you're airing it up. So when you rework it, it'll kind of shove that tire back underneath, or the tube, I'm sorry, back underneath the tire, and then when you're airing it up, it won't push it off the rim. So you have 10-20 pounds of pressure in it, spin it around, make sure it's not bubbling off, everything looks good and dialed, then go ahead and air it up to whatever pressure you want, and then start putting it back on your bike. When you're putting it back on your bike, I like to put the chain on the rear cog or sprocket on the back, put it on there, slide it all the way up into your dropouts, put the chain onto your sprocket in the front, crank it on there. Once you have it on both sprockets, pull your wheel back and tighten it down and get your chain tight. So when you're tightening your rear wheel down, just pull it back with your hands and tighten it to where it's close to where your chain tightness is where you want it to be. Don't really worry about it too much, just get it pulled back and tightened down. Say it's off a little bit crooked, or your chain needs to be tighter. What you can do is both sides are tight, just loosen one side. While the other side's tight, you can kind of pry your wheel over by just pushing it. Since the one side's tight, it gives you like a little bit of leverage. You can just pry the one side over, tighten that down, and then loosen the other side and adjust it from there. All right guys, thanks for watching. This is BMX Basics with ridebmx.com. This is how to change a flat tire. It's gonna happen, so hopefully if you watch this, it helps out and makes your life a little bit easier.